What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you with our weekly rankings. As you guys know, every Saturday we're going to be coming at you guys with our weekly rankings, quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends, where we differ from ECR, which is expert consensus ranking on FantasyPros. So basically, what we're going over here is who we're higher on relative to consensus. We'll try and talk about guys that will start these guys over and vice versa. So that's basically what we're doing today. If you guys want access to our rankings, you can go to the fantasystockexchange.com. One of three ways that you can get it. You can buy them outright for $20. You can sign up on underdogfantasy.com, promo code FSE. You'll get a $10 match back on whatever you deposit, and you will get our weekly rankings for free, or you can become a Patreon, patreon.com/fantasystockexchange. Anyways, Danny, how you doing today? You ready to get into this?
Doing well. And yeah, I'm ready to roll, talk about our rankings going into Sunday's football slate. And yeah, for those of you who were able to overcome a Christian McCaffrey injury by the end of the week, make sure you comment that at the end of Sunday, because losing Christian McCaffrey to a lot of those teams was a death sentence. So I'm happy. I'm ready to roll.
All right. As always, before we get into this, like, comment, subscribe, comment any of your questions down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We're going to hit the intro and then we're going to get right into this. We're going to start off with the quarterback position. There's, a lot of good matchups on the slate this week. A lot of really high-end plays like Kyler Murray, like Lamar Jackson, like Russell Wilson. We expect these guys to have some very high-end ceilings this week. Those are my top three quarterbacks. I'm assuming you have probably similar guys in the top three.
Kyler, Lamar, and Patrick Mahomes.
Okay, all right, yeah. So I have Mahomes at 4, so it's pretty much a wash there. But who is the guy that you have higher than consensus?
The guy I'm highest on comparatively to consensus this week is actually going to be Justin Fields of the Chicago Bears. Listen, I talked about it on my quarterback start sit show video, but I basically broke down exactly what I went over in my top 5 breakouts video, where the Konami code, aka rushing quarterbacks, are the biggest market inequality currently in 4-point passing touchdown leagues. If you guys want more information on me breaking that down, you could check out either of those 2 videos. But with Justin Fields, you're getting a legitimate super athlete at the quarterback position. We have seen this guy used in abundance in the rushing game anytime he touches the field. And going up against the Cleveland Browns, who should be able to put up points on the other side, I'm confident with starting Justin Fields to ultimately unlock this offense's potential.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And it is a little risky starting a rookie quarterback on the road in what is like kind of a semi-tough matchup. But as of right now, the Browns are actually giving up the second most points to quarterbacks, both the Houston Texans quarterback, Tyrod Taylor, and I can't remember who they played in week 1,
Patrick
but they
Mahomes.
were, yeah, Patrick Mahomes. All right. So those guys were able to put up good performances against the Browns defense. This Browns defense is pretty good, but I think Justin Fields, if he's able to get things done with his legs, should be able to put up some fantasy numbers on this defense. The guy I have higher than consensus, and I'm going back to the well on this guy because I've been higher than consensus on him like every week, and he's kind of disappointed so far, but it's Ryan Tannehill. I think what we saw from the Indianapolis Colts defense has not really inspired a lot of confidence in their ability to defend against quarterbacks. We saw Matthew Stafford have a great game, and Cooper Kupp obviously go hog wild last week. And we also saw Tyler Lockett and Russell Wilson do the same thing in week 1. So what I'm kind of predicting, I talked about A.J. Brown as one of the biggest buy low candidates in fantasy right now. I think this Titans passing offense is going to get off to, a bigger start. Maybe it's a Derrick Henry game by the end of the game. By the fourth quarter, they're salting the game away with Derrick Henry. But I think this passing offense is what gets them ahead to that point.
Yeah, and again, I currently have Tannehill more so aligned with consensus, but after realistically quarterback 7-8 area where I have Tom Brady and Josh Allen, I think 9 to 15, 9 to 16 or so is a very conversational type of tier where you could have guys higher and lower pending. I agree, though. I think Ryan Tannehill could be in store for a good bounce back. You mentioned that weapon score. Julio Jones, A.J. Brown have to get on track sooner rather than later. And Ryan Tannehill is going to be the one to catapult them back into that status. So I think this is a get-right game, divisional game going against the Colts. I like Ryan Tannehill to ultimately even supplant where I currently have him ranked.
Well, yeah, currently I have him ranked at 9, which is actually ahead of where I have ranked. I have him higher than Tom Brady. I have him higher than Matthew Stafford and Kirk Cousins and Justin Fields, Daniel Jones right now. So that's where I have Tannehill ranked. Again, I usually go bold with the quarterback rankings because at the quarterback position, we know it's really matchup based. We know It's kind of how the game script flows. And I think Ryan Tannehill in this game is going to be able to get up big with the passing offense. And one other guy that I do have a bit higher than consensus is Joe Burrow. He was outside of the top 20 quarterbacks in consensus. I have him at 18. And the reason I have him a bit higher is just because of the amount of injuries that the Steelers defense is facing right now. I don't think they're quite as bad of a matchup without TJ Watt, potentially without some of the other guys up front. Devin Bush and Tyson Alualu, I think, are both banged up
Carlos
as well.
Davis.
Yeah, there's a number of guys banged up for that defense. I also think, T. Higgins is out for this game, but I think Jamar Chase is going to be able to be like a true alpha receiver in this game. Pittsburgh has been absolutely awful against wide receivers so far this year, so I think there's a big game coming for either Chase or Boyd, or maybe both.
Yeah, and don't you worry, I'll be talking about Jamar Chase later on, but I also have Joe Burrow 3 spots ahead of consensus. I currently have him as my 18th overall quarterback. Another guy that I have higher than consensus, and I didn't think I'd be higher on him because I don't even have him relatively that high, but Trevor Lawrence, I currently have as my 19th rated quarterback, and he's 23 on consensus. Man, this Jaguars offense has to have a get right week, and going up against the Arizona Cardinals, who we know are going to be able to put pressure on the other side. We've looked at the Cardinals game just last week against Minnesota as a prime example. I do think that the likes of Chark, the likes of Marvin Jones, the likes of Laviska Shenault are going to be able to have that quote unquote bounce back type of game. If that's the case, Trevor Lawrence can be able to succeed. I don't have crazy high expectations. Again, I didn't expect.
Let me ask you a couple guys. Would you start the Trevor Lawrence over some of these guys? Because I personally would start these guys all over Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
Jared Goff.
I would start Trevor Lawrence.
Derek Carr.
I would start Trevor. Oh, I actually have Derek Carr higher.
Okay. Baker Mayfield.
I would start Trevor Lawrence easily.
Really? Okay. So yeah. I have those guys all ahead of Trevor Lawrence right now. And I think but Jared Goff right now is currently like 23 in consensus or something like that, or 22 in consensus. I have him at 20. I think this is a guy against Baltimore, another situation where you're probably going to have to put up points. And unlike Trevor Lawrence, I've already seen Jared Goff do this twice this season where he's played from behind and been pretty good at that when he's playing from behind.
Yeah, again, this is more so to do with the faith in terms of the upside that I see with Trevor Lawrence. Because if Trevor Lawrence ends up, I mean, it's easy to say playing better, but give or take, you got to give the rookie the benefit of the doubt for the first couple games. Talking about the athleticism, talking about the arm, talking about the weapon score going against the Cardinals. I just prefer the ceiling potential to what a Jared Goff or a Baker Mayfield would represent for me. Two quick ones before we get into the guys we're lower on. I have Justin Herbert 3 spots ahead of consensus. Talked about in the quarterback start sit show, but this is going to be one of the highest scoring games of the slate. And we know Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes is going to be the duel for the ages at the 1 p.m. So I'm excited to see that. Another guy, Kirk Cousins, mentioned it on the quarterback start sit, but basically you got Kirk Cousins going up against Russell Wilson in a potential similar game script to what we saw against Kyler Murray last week. I think Kirk Cousins and that Vikings offense is going to be able to put up points against the Seahawks this week.
Yep, I actually have both of those guys 2 and 3 spots higher than consensus as well. A guy that I do have lower than consensus is Daniel Jones. I also have Teddy Bridgewater. Both guys 3 spots lower than consensus. I'm just a little bit hesitant to trust these guys. I know they're in good matchups against the Falcons and Jets respectively, but putting them over guys like Sam Darnold, who played really well on Thursday night, I had him over both of those guys. I also had Justin Fields, who maybe you want to start those guys just for some safety aspect because it is a rookie quarterback on the road in his first start. But I would start Ryan Tannehill. I would start Kirk Cousins. I would start Matthew Stafford, Tom Brady, all of those guys over Daniel Jones and Teddy Bridgewater. I'm just not really willing to put them into that echelon of quarterback. Right outside that range, sure, where you're going to stream them. But some of those guys I see as every week starters, and I don't, see the same thing with Daniel Jones and Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, I agree there. I mean, Daniel Jones ranked at 12 on the ECR was just pretty egregious when I saw it. I thought I was going to be like semi-aligned with ADP or ECR. I have him at 16, but apparently I'm 4 spots lower than consensus. I don't know what gives. Are we forgetting about completely 2 years of game tape because of one good game against Washington on a Thursday Night Football? I'm not. It's a great matchup. Don't get me wrong. I have semi expectations for Daniel Jones in this one, but ranking him above some of the proven quarterbacks, like he's ranked above like Ryan Tannehill right now.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Like I can't start him over Ryan. Like I know Ryan Tannehill hasn't been great so far, but I expect him to get on track. I know we saw his play action percentage go back up to what we saw in Ryan Tannehill's heyday in 2019, 2020. So yes, like you said, Daniel Jones had a good game against Washington. He kind of made us eat crow on Thursday night when we were talking about him on the live stream, but it's Thursday Night Football. Weird shit happens all the time. And Daniel Jones has shown spike weeks in the past. He's not a guy that has been a low ceiling quarterback every week. He's usually boom or bust. And I think in this game, when everybody's starting him, when everybody has faith in him, this is the week I see him disappointing, if I'm being honest.
Yep. No, I absolutely agree here. A guy that I also have lower is going to be Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, I get it. The Packers defense hasn't looked great thus far, but what about Jimmy Garoppolo's game screams upside? He's probably going to finish higher than I have him ranked, but realistically here, you're getting a stick in the mud of a quarterback who doesn't throw the ball deep. Cool. You want to lock 14 points into your lineup? Nice. I'm going with upside options instead of him.
No, I definitely don't disagree there. Jimmy Garoppolo is almost like I would rather start Derek Carr and Jared Goff
Easily.
than Jimmy Garoppolo
Yeah,
easily than both.
I have Carr at 17, bro.
Yeah, I have Carr at like 21 or something like that. He's a guy that I think you can start. It is a tougher matchup against Miami, but he's been really good so far. Same with Goff.
Yep. No, I fully agree there. Then we're going to quickly end off with two guys that I have lower on in the top 10. Again, this isn't egregious. I mentioned Jalen Hurts. I have him 3 spots lower. This isn't necessarily me being lower on the player because I still think he's going to be a really good option. But ranking him number 7 this week, who in my opinion, Dallas Cowboys, they've stepped up on the defensive end from a pure passing efficiency standpoint. I just don't necessarily see it being there for Hurts. Now, his rushing is going to be able to supplement that, but because of the lack of passing I see outside of Devonta Smith, who should be shadowed by Trayvon Diggs, I would prefer fringe options like an Aaron Rodgers over him, a Tom Brady over him. It's just close, but again, I'll lean that way.
I actually personally would start Jalen Hurts over both of the guys that you just mentioned. Tom Brady without Antonio Brown in this game, also playing against the Rams defense on the road. I have him at 10, so he's pretty significantly lower. I have Aaron Rodgers ahead of him. I have Jalen Hurts ahead of him. Justin Herbert, Dak Prescott, Josh Allen immediately ahead of him, but I would start him. I don't know if you're going to ask me this question. Would I start Matthew Stafford or Tom Brady in the exact same game? I think I'm going to move Matthew Stafford ahead of him because I think I would start Matthew Stafford if I had both quarterbacks. So he's probably actually going to finish out at 11 for me, which is going to be 3 spots lower than consensus on my own quarterback.
I'm down to do that bet right now. Tom Brady versus Jalen Hurts.
Tom Brady versus Jalen Hurts. I'm betting against Tom Brady. I feel like that's a bad idea, but all right, I'll take Jalen Hurts.
And then finally, quickly rounding it up, and then we'll go into the next position. But I have Josh Allen 3 spots lower simply because, again, I have Tom Brady over him. I have Justin Herbert over him. I have Dak Prescott over him. Josh Allen still being at 5 in consensus, despite not playing Josh Allen type of football in these first couple of weeks, gives me a little bit of pause. Again, I'm still confident in him. He's still got the talent. He's still got the weapon score to be able to get right. But from what we've seen these past 2 weeks, he just genuinely has not played good.
No, I don't disagree. I have him at 5 this week, though. I have him in like a bounce back spot against the Washington football team defense, which honestly has been quite average so far to start the season. I think Josh Allen gets right in this game, and I talked about it in my GPPs article for Draft Sharks, but he's my favorite tournament play at quarterback, stacking him up with Stephon Diggs and Cole Beasley and stuff like that. So we can move from quarterback now to the running back position, and I'll let you start it off. Who's one of the running backs that you have significantly higher than consensus? Probably the same guy that I have as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have Trey Sermon 24 spots higher. I think that's a little bit of a cop-out because I don't think ECR has caught up to the fact that Elijah Mitchell is doubtful for this game. But talking about guys that I would start Trey Sermon over, he's currently, I believe, my RB 26.5 PPR. Let me just take a look. He's my RB 27.5 PPR. I would start him over the likes of Melvin Gordon, James Robinson, Tony Pollard, Mike Davis, and James White if you're talking about a comparative situation if you're filling out your flex. With Sermon, I mean, they used the 3rd round draft capital. I know that didn't really mean much in those first couple of weeks because he was inactive week 1 and week 2. He ended up getting his concussion after 1 carry, but all signs have really been showing that Shanahan's liked his progress this week. He's going to get a bigger role in this offense. And with Elijah Mitchell particularly out, I could see a situation where Trey Sermon is handling the majority of those carries, especially because you mentioned Elijah Mitchell. You mentioned Jermichael Hasty dealing with injury. Who else is going to get touches? Kerryon Johnson, Jaquez Patrick? Like, I just don't see that being the case. I think Trey Sermon's going to end up being the main running back in this system. How about you?
I have Trey Sermon at the exact same spot you have him.
Yeah.
I have him at 26 as well. I have him right ahead of Melvin Gordon. I have him right ahead of Mike Davis, Leonard Fournette, Nyheim Hines, James White, Javonte Williams, Tony Pollard, Sony Michel. That's kind of the range I'm looking at. With Trey Sermon, I would start a guy like James Robinson ahead of him. I would start Kenyon Drake ahead of him, assuming Josh Jacobs is going to be out. I would start Kareem Hunt ahead of him. I would start Clyde Edwards-Helaire, as much as people don't like Clyde Edwards-Helaire right now, ahead of him. So that's kind of where I'm at with Trey Sermon. Like you said, it is probably a cop-out because I'm assuming he's going to work his way into this like 30 range once everybody catches up to the news on Elijah Mitchell, because I think that's probably what we're looking at with Trey Sermon is an every down 1 and 2, or sorry, not an every down back, but like a 1 and 2 down back, similar to what we saw from Elijah Mitchell, like a 16 to 18 carry, 2 or 3 target type of running back in this game. That's probably what we're looking at in Kyle Shanahan's scheme. He's going to mix in like Marcus Cannon, whoever else that they signed at the position. But a couple second-year running backs that I'm higher on is Antonio Gibson and Deandre Swift. I like what I've seen from these guys so far. Deandre Swift, again, I've heard this point echoed over and over again, that the Lions are not going to be in favorable game script for Deandre Swift. But again, Deandre Swift is the 2-minute drill back. He's the long down and distance back. He runs like a 70% route participation, and he currently leads the NFL at running back in targets right now. So I have no idea why people are still low on Deandre Swift. He is game script proof. Like, they're going to be down in this game. I understand that. So he's probably only going to have 8 to 12 carries, but I don't want him to have 15 to 20 carries. I want him to have 8 to 12 carries and 6, 7, 8, 9 targets.
Yeah, no, I fully agree here. And I quickly want to mention that it's funny because Deandre Swift is currently leading the NFL in running back targets. And Dan Campbell literally went out and said after the game that they need to use him more in the passing game. So, all signs point, like I could see a scenario where Deandre Swift is a legitimate top 3 back by the end of the season in terms of overall targets. You want to throw Alvin Kamara in there. You want to throw Austin Eckler in there. Maybe even Christian McCaffrey.
Maybe even Derrick Henry. He's targeting Austin Eckler right now.
Yeah, for sure. That is wild. So I do agree with you specifically on Deandre Swift. I have him 6 spots higher than consensus in my half PPR ranks. He's actually currently my RB10. And until consensus realizes that this guy is a legitimate game script proof RB1 type. We saw his floor last week and he was still above double digits. So I'm fully all in on Deandre Swift. Another guy that I'm higher on than consensus, I'll talk a little lower on the spectrum, but Michael Carter, I have 10 spots higher than consensus. He's currently at RB33 on the week, going up against the Denver Broncos this week. And I kind of mentioned it on the waiver show, but Michael Carter is starting to really make a name for himself in this backfield. He tied Ty Johnson for the lead, or for the team lead in snap share this past week at 45%, and actually had the most opportunities at 16 this past week. If he's able to become that lead back, if he's able to get that number 1 role, I think sooner rather than later, he'll work his way into that RB3 status, potentially RB2 status once that Jets offense starts getting things figured out.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I talked about Michael Carter a lot on the trade target show because I just talked about the Jets offense in general because I think they're at a basement price right now if you were to acquire them. And I'm assuming you talked about Michael Carter because he probably is on the waiver wire in most leagues right now. Yeah. So that is, a guy that I'm also higher on. I'm not quite as high on him as you. I want to still kind of see him continue to improve in that backfield. Speaking of continuing to improve in a backfield, I just want to talk about the Broncos backfield real quick, just because it's kind of like a weekly situation that we need to keep monitoring. I have Melvin Gordon right now at 27, which is 2 spots lower than consensus. And I have Javonte Williams currently at 32 right now, 5 spots lower than consensus. So consensus has both of these guys inside the top 30. Again, if you have guys that we know are the starting running back for their team, even if it's gross, like James Robinson, Kenyon Drake, if Josh Jacobs is out, Clyde Edwards-Helaire again, who's, definitely getting all the opportunities, I can't start them, these Broncos running backs, over some of those guys. I still would favor some of those guys. Even Mike Davis, I would start over most of these Broncos running backs just because he's getting the majority of the groundwork for his team. Melvin Gordon and Javonte Williams, week in and week out, is going to be like a monitor the situation because Melvin Gordon is clearly going to get phased out as the season goes along. Currently, he's playing well right now, so I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Javonte Williams is going to continue to be a 14 to 17 touch type running back, and they're just going to kind of cannibalize each other until either Javonte outright wins the job, Melvin Gordon gets injured, Javonte Williams gets injured, something like that happens.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there on the ultimate shakeup of that Broncos backfield. Transitioning off that, another guy that I'm higher on compared to consensus. We kind of briefly talked about him before, but Kenyon Drake, I have 5 spots higher than consensus. He's currently my RB 23 on the week, going up in a little revenge game scenario against his Miami Dolphins that he got drafted by. But talking about the fact that Josh Jacobs is expected to miss this game, and Kenyon Drake, we have seen used in abundance in the passing game thus far. I believe he's gotten 5+ receptions in both of the first 2 games. If that's the case, if we do think that this Miami Dolphins defense is going to be stingy to say the least on the outside with those 2 lockdown corners, I can see Kenyon Drake really being a good contributor in the passing game, with ultimately being that number 1 lead back type of carry volume. So I like him. I think he's a low-end RB2 with potentially a higher ceiling, given the fact that he could have 18 touches. He could have 7-8 targets in this type of game.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely don't disagree. One other guy, I think I mentioned him already, but I am higher on Antonio Gibson. The reason I'm higher on him is because I think everyone's just too low on him. I think everybody's overreacting to the J.D. McKissic thing that happened on Thursday night because it was a primetime game. Everybody saw it. Antonio Gibson was a guy that got 25 opportunities in week 1. I think people kind of forget that. 85% of the opportunity share for the Washington backfield in week 1. So in this matchup against Buffalo. He also hasn't scored a touchdown on the season, and I think he could definitely get into the end zone in this game, which we know Buffalo, I think, should be able to put up points on the other side of things. So could be a game where the Washington football team has to score. Antonio Gibson could get into the end zone this one. So I have him currently as my RB10, and I think a lot of people are kind of just overthinking Antonio Gibson. Do you have anybody else that you're higher on, or do you want to move to lower?
I quickly wanted to give respect to Austin Eckler. He's currently RB4 on the week, going up to play the Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah, I know, pretty high, but we have seen this guy used in all facets of the game. In week 1, we saw him get the goal line touches that we were craving for in previous years. And everybody going into week 2 is like, damn, he got 0 targets. Like, what's going on? That's not Austin Eckler. That's not Austin Eckler. Week 2 comes along. He produces 9 receptions on 9 targets for over 70 receiving yards. I just think that after an Alvin Kamara type, this is the number one overall touches don't mean shit in fantasy type of running back. Because at the end of the day here, if he's giving me 18 to 20 combined touches, but he's also garnering 7 to 11 targets per game, this is a guy that's going to be able to return on value. And going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, top 3 highest implied over under this week, I think both teams are going to be able to put up points. And Austin Eckler could be in store for a 25 plus point type of outing. And if that's the case, he's going to firmly entrench himself in the top 5. Another guy I have a little bit higher. Again, I've tempered my expectations on him because of the split we've seen with Tony Pollard, but Ezekiel Elliott always plays some of his best football in the division. I mean, talking about the Giants, talking about Washington, we're talking about the Eagles. Monday Night Football goes to play the Eagles at home, first home game of the year. I do think that Ezekiel Elliott's going to be in a prime position to end up scoring touchdowns, to end up being that lead back that people want to just write him off the being because Tony Pollard made a couple splash plays in week 2.
Yep. I also have him 3 spots higher than consensus because, that's the true thing. He does play better in the division. Austin Eckler, I already talked about it in my my GPPs article, but 8.5 targets per game is what he averages against the Kansas City Chiefs over the last 2 years. This is a guy that is used a lot in the passing game against this team because predictably they're playing from behind or they're just needing to throw a lot to match the Chiefs in scoring. So definitely don't disagree with those takes. On the lower side of things, I think we could probably speed this up a little bit. Nick Chubb right now, I have 8 spots lower than consensus, mainly because this guy only has 29 touches on the season.
Yeah.
So he's played 2 games. He's getting like 14 touches a game. And I know Nick Chubb is going to be efficient. He is one of the more efficient runners in the league. He's going to average 5.5, 6 yards a carry because he's simply that good. But we're playing fantasy football here. We're not playing real football. We're playing fantasy football. And Nick Chubb is a guy that simply doesn't get the touches of a Deandre Swift, especially the weighted opportunity of Deandre Swift. He doesn't get the touches that Najee Harris gets. He doesn't get the touches that Joe Mixon gets. And on top of that, he's playing against a Bears defense that absolutely stifled Joe Mixon last week. So I don't think that Nick Chubb is going to average 5, 6, 7, 8 yards a carry like he did last week. I think he's going to be closer to like the 4.5 yards per carry in this game. And if he doesn't get into the end zone, he's probably going to disappoint your fantasy lineup. Now, Nick Chubb is capable of getting into the end zone, obviously, and he's also capable of breaking off a long play. But this defense has been pretty good against the run, and I'm kind of a little bit concerned to starting Nick Chubb.
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about Nick Chubb, in terms of real life NFL runners, apart from maybe Derrick Henry, like, can you name a better real life between the tackles runner than Nick Chubb? Like, no. Like, and it's crazy that we said, yeah, he's probably going to get 5.5 to 6 yards per carry on the season. But even that, like, we don't cite negative regression at all on this channel, but Nick Chubb is currently at a 6.8 yards per carry clip right now in the season. Less than 30 total touches in 2 games. He's
played 2 really easy defenses against the run, too, in Kansas City and Houston.
Yeah, like, he's a very good real life runner, but the problem is you're not getting the elite volume and you're not going to get the pass catching work with Nick Chubb. So I fully agree with you. Again, if you want to rank him as a back end RB1, low end or high end RB2, I'm fine with that. It's just he's currently number 6 in consensus going up against a tough Bears front. I'm just not all in on that whatsoever. And another guy that I'm kind of lower on comparatively to consensus, I know you mentioned Mike Davis earlier, but this is just such a muddied situation because I genuinely just don't think Matt Ryan and the Falcons offense is capable of really getting Mike Davis in the game script we need. I think this is going to be a situation where they're going to be behind. As bad as the Giants are, the Falcons may be one of the 2 worst teams in the NFL right now, as crazy as that sounds. If that's the case, I do see this being a 60-40 type of split between Mike Davis and Cordero Patterson, with obviously Cordero Patterson getting the majority of the receiving work as we've seen in these first 2 games. Cordero Patterson is currently a top 10 running back in fantasy football. I didn't realize that. That is wild to me, but if that's the case, if he's getting those third down opportunities, if he's getting that receiving work, I just don't see a lot in store for Mike Davis, despite him getting the bulk of the overall carries.
The one thing I will say about Mike Davis is that he has 6 targets and 7 targets in the first 2 games. So that's why I'm higher on him. It's because he's gotten the targets, and this game projects to be high scoring. I think the over-under is like 51 or something like that. And if Daniel Jones and the Giants offense, Saquon Barkley, can put up points on the other side, which I think they will, I think Matt Ryan and the Falcons are going to have to do the same. And I think Mike Davis could get into the end zone in this game, which is why I have him at 25. It's still one spot lower than he is in consensus, but I do have him a bit higher than you do, obviously. So that's where I'm at on Mike Davis. I also have Chris Carson 5 spots lower than consensus. He had 2 touchdowns last week. He was completely inefficient on the ground. I think Chris Carson is going to be this type of running back. He's going to be like a 14 carries for like 52 yards. He needs to get into the end zone majority of the time. And in my opinion, he needs to be ranked near Damian Harris then, because that's the type of running back Damian Harris is. And Chris Carson is a good running back, and he gets more receiving work than Damian Harris gets. But I just can't rank him above Miles Sanders, who gets more receiving work and is more explosive. I can't rank him above Saquon Barkley, who gets everything and should be back to his old self. I can't rank him ahead of David Montgomery, Deandre Swift, some of the guys that he's ranked ahead of right now in ECR. So that's where I'm at with Chris Carson. If you have Chase Edmonds versus Chris Carson, I would start Chris Carson. But if you're deciding between Saquon and Chris Carson, give me Saquon.
Yeah, I mean, I'm also a little bit comparatively lower to Saquon, but that's simply because he hasn't looked like the same Saquon. Again, if Saquon goes out and busts out a huge week against Atlanta, I'm fine with rising him back up. It's just the problem is he hasn't been that player in these first 2 games. We've seen the workload step up, so maybe we can see Saquon Barkley end up stepping his game, but he just looks a little bit tentative right now. He just doesn't really look like that same type of runner. Now, do I think he's going to fix it? Absolutely, but betting on that completely and getting him to ECR 13th overall, I just currently can't do.
Yeah, I have no problems with that. I know Saquon's a really popular DFS play this week because he's so cheap on all the sites. Yeah. So he's a guy that a lot of people are probably going to be relying on in DFS especially.
Yeah, for sure. 2 guys I quickly want to group together, and then we can get on to the wide receivers. Leonard Fournette, I have 4 spots lower. We're talking about a Los Angeles Rams front that's played pretty well to start the season. And of course, I do expect that to be a quote unquote pass funnel game on both ends. I genuinely think that your Bucks against the Rams
that favors Leonard Fournette though, because he is getting the majority of the long down and distance snaps. He's running the most routes on the team. He's kind of like getting all the best volume for the team. Most of the carries, long down and distance, receiving work. He also has, capability of breaking big plays. He's also getting short down and distance. So I have Leonard Fournette at consensus right now. I think he's actually a pretty decent start if you guys need to start him. But that Rams front is definitely, something to be afraid of on the ground for sure.
And maybe I should raise him now, especially with the news that Antonio Brown's missing this game. They could supplement that short passing game with Leonard Fournette to combat the fact that they're without AB. So I probably prematurely just ranked him 4 spots lower, but either way, you're probably looking at a low-end RB3, and guys that I would prefer to him would be like the James Robinson, the Kareem Hunt, Trace.
I have those guys at like 23 and 25. So yeah, I would prefer them as well. But if you're talking, Leonard Fournette or Nyheim Hines, James White, Javonte Williams, I'll take Leonard Fournette.
Yep, that's for sure. And the last guy I'm going to mention, CEH, I have 4 spots lower than consensus, 3 spots lower than consensus. He's currently still at 18, and he simply doesn't get the usage we want. He's not going to get the receiving work, and he's not going to get the goal line work. So we're talking about a 12 to 15 touch back that doesn't get any of the valuable work for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm just not in on that.
Yeah, I have him at 22. He's, like I said in the RB rankings video or the RB starts and sets video, I just think he's going to live at this part in my rankings because he has a chance at a touchdown because his team is going to be in the red zone a lot, but they use him, 10% of the time that they're in the red zone, which is like a very low percentage, especially for an offense that's that good. With the New Orleans Saints, for example, anytime they get down to the red zone, it's like 75% Alvin Kamara. Like it's a huge difference between somebody like that and somebody like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Even like a guy like Damian Harris gets used into the red zone like 65, 70% of the time.
Yep. No, I fully agree with that. So transitioning off of the running back position, we can go to the wide receivers, and you can see the first name on the list. But we mentioned kind of briefly with Joe Burrow why we're kind of higher on him. If T. Higgins is out for this game, I legitimately have Jamar Chase as a fringe top 15 wide receiver. He's currently my wide receiver 17 in my rankings, and this guy's just played like an alpha. I mean, we were looking at last week, oh my God, he's struggling. Oh my God, he's not getting the targets. But Jamar Chase, the part of his game that makes you so alert to him, so excited about him, is that on any given snap, on any given target, on any given play, you have that big 40-plus yard touchdown potential because he is that type of player. We're talking about DJ Moore. If DJ Moore scored a touchdown per game type of clip, I genuinely think Jamar Chase is that level of talent, is that level of skill, and has that staying as the alpha in this offense already. So I'm expecting another big performance from Jamar Chase, and I think if he's able to build off his first 2 weeks, we could be talking about a legitimate wide receiver 2 rest of the season.
I literally compared him to DJ Moore coming out of school, so I definitely like that shout out. Yeah, the Steelers defense has not been very good against wide receivers so far this season. Top 10 points at the position. You mentioned a 40-yard touchdown. We saw Ruggs burn him for a huge touchdown last week. I think even Diggs and Beasley didn't have the greatest games in week 1, but they were heavily targeted, and I think that's what you're going to get out of Jamar Chase with T. Higgins out of the lineup. I think both him and Tyler Boyd are excellent starts. I have both of them higher than consensus right now, and I have Chase at 20. I think you said you had him at 16 or
17.
something like that. Let me just ask you a few questions of who you would start Jamar Chase over right now.
Yep,
would you start Jamar Chase over Allen Robinson?
Yep.
Would you start him over Deebo Samuel?
Yep.
Would you start him over Julio Jones?
Yep.
Would you start him over Mike Evans?
Yep.
Would you start him over Terry McLaurin?
Terry McLaurin, I have 2 spots higher than him. 15.
Okay. Would you start him over Adam Thielen?
I have Thielen 1 spot higher than him.
Okay, so that's about the range that I have him as well. I have him at 20 right behind Julio Jones, Mike Evans, and Terry McLaurin. I have him ahead of Allen Robinson, Deebo Samuel, Chase Claypool, Cortland Sutton is where I have Jamar Chase currently sitting right now. So yeah, wide receiver 2, yeah, I think he can be a rest of season wide receiver 2 as well because we've seen this guy produce big plays already. We know he has a rapport with the quarterback, and we've already seen that, and he looks very good anytime he gets the ball in his hands. And I think the target potential of him is going to keep going up as Joe Burrow gets more involved in the offense because right now, like an underrated storyline is the fact that the Bengals aren't running a lot of plays. The pace isn't very high right now, and they're not throwing the ball a whole lot. And maybe that's to do with Joe Burrow. Maybe they're trying to slow the game down with Joe Mixon or something like that. But I think they're going to get back to the like 45 pass attempt range that they were at when Joe Burrow was healthy last year eventually.
And it's crazy because you mentioned they threw, I think, 28 total times in week 1. And even with that, I mean, Jamar Chase still had a 27% target share in week 1. In week 2, we did see the volume end up supplementing. I'm just kind of looking at it right now. We saw Joe Burrow attempt 30 passes. I think that's going to keep
still very low, though, for the Bengals offense.
Yeah. Like, we're talking about a team that was legitimately averaging like 42 passing attempts per game last year. So
yeah.
I do
and
think
they're passing the ball at like a bottom 10 clip at the NFL right now.
Yeah, like while I don't think they're going to probably reach that 42 top of the league type of pace, even if they rise to like the 36, 37 type of range on aggregate for the rest of the year, we're talking about a legitimate 8, 9 plus target per game type of wide receiver with Jamar Chase. So I'm fully excited about him. Another guy that I'm excited about that I do think has the alpha status so far in his offense, I have Corey Davis 9 spots higher, and I get it. If you started Corey Davis last week, you should have been a little bit disappointed. That's a little bit of a lack of effort or lack of input on my end. The fact that is Bill Belichick's number one priority was always going to try to be take away Corey Davis, given what he did in week 1. So that's a lack of foresight on my part, but I do think Corey Davis bounce back game going up against the Denver Broncos. I just think Corey Davis has the skill set, the alpha status to be able to command targets. And I think he's going to get right against this Denver Broncos secondary.
Yeah, I also think Corey Davis is a pretty solid start in this game. I have him 5 spots higher than consensus, currently at 33. I have him right ahead of Robbie Anderson, who we already saw play.
Yeah.
Definitely had a horrible week in that one. I have him ahead of Marvin Jones, Jacoby Myers, Cole Beasley, some of those guys in that range. So that's kind of where I'm sitting at with Corey Davis. I'm going to go like 3 in a row real quick, just off the cuff. Chase Claypool, I have 5 spots higher than consensus. Currently at 23 right now with Deontay Johnson out. I expect Chase Claypool to get a bigger target share, and obviously Juju probably sees a bump up as well with Deontay Johnson out, but I really like Chase Claypool's ability in this game to potentially have like a long touchdown or some red zone looks or something like that on top of the like 9-10 targets that I think he could see this week. I also have Kenny Golladay 8 spots higher than consensus going up against the Falcons. We saw Fabian Moreau just get absolutely abused by Mike Evans last week. That is who the primary matchup of Kenny Golladay is this week. And AJ Terrell is set to be on Darius Slayton with Isaiah Oliver on Sterling Shepard. So I think both Kenny Golladay and Sterling Shepard are great starts this week if you need to throw them into your lineup. And then the last guy, and then I'll throw it over to you, is who do I just have here? Oh, Odell Beckham Jr. So I have Odell Beckham Jr. 24 spots higher than consensus. I'm at 38 this week because Jarvis Landry is out and the Browns really don't have any other passing options. I think Odell Beckham Jr., we saw him command a 25% target share last year when he was healthy. I think this could be a guy that gets like 8 to 10 targets this week. And if you're going to give me that kind of volume, I'll take that as like a wide receiver 3 option for sure.
Yeah, I just simply didn't even see Odell, so that's my fault. But I fully agree. He's firmly entrenched in that fringe wide receiver 3 range for me right now. And fully agree. You mentioned Chase Claypool. I also have 5 spots higher. Without Deontay Johnson there, I think you can lock and load him as a low-end wide receiver 2 type of flex appeal. So I really like Chase Claypool. I'm going to rip off 2 guys that really play similar in terms of what their games represent, but call me a homer. Amari Cooper, I have 7 spots higher than consensus. Yes, you heard that correctly. He's currently ranked as the wide receiver 13 in ECR. He's my wide receiver 6 this week. I understand that's high because of what the output was last week, and I understand he's dealing with that rib injury, but this matchup is just so prime for him to explode. We have seen Amari Cooper absolutely father this Eagles secondary over these last couple years. I mean, this guy's legitimately averaging 170 yards and a touchdown per game against the Eagles. I don't see that fading off again this week. You'd expect Darius Slay to be on it for the majority of the game, but at the end of the day here, Darius Slay is either washed or, simply put, can't hang with Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper, when he is on his game, is a legitimate top 6, top 7 type of wide receiver, and I do think this is one of his games, as we saw in week 1, where he put up 139 and 2 touchdowns against your Tampa Bay Buccaneers secondary. So I think this is his get-right game after his quote-unquote Amari Cooper boom-bust game in week 2.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the Amari Cooper call. I think when you look at the high ceiling plays on this slate, I have Chris Godwin at 10 right now. He's currently ranked at 15, so I have him higher than consensus. I have Cooper Kupp at 6, who's at 9 in consensus right now, and I think both of those guys have huge ceilings. If you guys are playing DFS in a tournament lineup and you want to know who has a huge ceiling, who could have the 40-point week this week, I think Kupp, I think Godwin, Metcalf in this game against Minnesota has a massive ceiling. I think he could be under-owned right now too, with Tyler Lockett being the guy that's produced at a crazy clip. A.J. Brown, I already talked about. I think he has a monster ceiling this week against the Colts secondary. I also really liked CeeDee Lamb as well going on Monday night. So that's kind of the guys that have really high ceilings. I think we can move on to some guys that were lower on, unless you have anybody else. Calvin Ridley, right now, I have him at 13. He's currently, I believe, 7.
I'm 11.
So I'm at 13, and it's mainly because of the Bradbury matchup. Now, I already saw Terry McLaurin kind of wipe the floor with James Bradbury on Thursday last week, so I'm not downgrading Calvin Ridley a little bit, but there's just so many great options this week, as I just mentioned, with those guys like Godwin, like Keenan Allen, like Amari Cooper, like A.J. Brown, that I'm just downgrading Calvin Ridley behind those guys. So if you're in an 8-man league or something like that, and you have a wide receiver core that consists of like Tyreek Hill, DK Metcalf, Justin Jefferson, Amari Cooper, and Keenan Allen and Calvin Ridley, then sit Calvin Ridley. But for the most part, you're still playing Calvin Ridley in any kind of like 12-man league because he's probably your wide receiver 1 or 2.
Yeah, no, I fully agree that you're going to start Calvin Ridley, but just temper your expectations given the fact that, in my opinion, you mentioned the Bradbury matchup, but in my opinion, Matt Ryan just simply has not played like a sufficient quarterback thus far. Kind of reminds me of a similar situation to what we saw with Ben Roethlisberger last year, where his arm looks cooked. He doesn't have the mobility to extend plays, and ultimately that's going to impact the entire offense. Again, Calvin Ridley should still get his similar 25% type of target share, but be wary of Matt Ryan this week is what I'll say. Positioning off that, I'll go to Laviska Shenault of the Jacksonville Jaguars, currently 45 in consensus. I have him ranked outside of my top 50, and he just simply has not played well. He's gotten the targets. I get it. Fully believe that in a full PPR, maybe you want to take a shot on this guy as your second flex type of play, but nothing has shown from his play thus far to really get you excited. I mean, this guy finished with negative receiving yards on 7 targets this past week. As much as we dog on Juju Smith-Schuster, even Juju Smith-Schuster hasn't been that type of inefficient. Laviska Shenault, I get it. It's a prime matchup, but I need to see something from him before I even remotely throw him into my lineup.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that call there. I'm actually just lower on the Jags in general this week. I have Marvin Jones 4 spots lower than consensus. DJ Chark 2 spots lower, and Laviska Shenault 5 spots lower, just because I don't believe in this offense. I know the Cardinals are going to put up points on the other side, but that's happened in back-to-back weeks now against the Jaguars. The Texans put up points in week 1, and their opponent last week, whose name is escaping me right now, put up points as well. And the Jags just can't get anything done on offense. There's just not a lot going on there. And yes, there's going to be volume for Jones, for Chark, for Shenault, but it's not good volume. It's bad volume. It's volume that is going to have a lot of incompletions. They're not going to get a lot of, efficiency out of it. So those guys are guys I'm not really willing to start if I can help it. If I have guys like Jacoby Myers, if I have Odell Beckham Jr., if I have Cole Beasley, if I have Will Fuller this week, who's coming back from injury, Darnell Mooney potentially over some of those Jags receivers, I think those are guys that I would consider all over those guys. I have Marvin Jones over some of them, but the other 2 receivers especially, I think I would start all those guys over Chark and Shenault.
Yeah, quickly. Yeah, and I quickly want to group 2 guys together before we go on to tight ends, unless you have anybody else to name.
No, but I think we can go on to tight ends right after this.
Okay, Robert Woods, I have 4 spots lower, simply because he should have the toughest matchup. You mentioned Carlton Davis should be on him in this game. He's currently ranked 23 by ECR, but nothing so far about his play has inspired me enough, including that bad matchup, to rank him above the 27 I currently have him. So I don't mind Robert.
I have him lower than you. I actually kind of forgot that I had him so low because I've talked about him so much this week. But yeah, Carlton Davis is going to be on him aligned. They're not going to shadow him with on Robert Woods, but just based on alignments, he is going to be on him. We've seen so far teams have attacked Jamel Dean, they've attacked Ross Cockrell, and just not thrown at Carlton Davis, because as much as the Bucs have given up points to the wide receiver position so far, like Carlton Davis has been phenomenal this year. So they're just not throwing at him, and it's going to continue to happen. It's what we see in Green Bay with Jair Alexander. He just never gets thrown at. So that's exactly what we're going to see in this game. Cooper Kupp is probably never going to be aligned against Carlton Davis unless they shadow him, which would be really shocking because Carlton doesn't usually play the slot. So I think Cooper Kupp in for a huge game in this one, and Robert Woods probably not so much. If you guys are playing in a DFS tournament lineup, do not put Robert Woods in your Rams stack. Put Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and either Van Jefferson or Tyler Higbee in your stack.
Yeah, I like Higbee this week.
I like Van in it too, because he's going to have the other easy matchup as well.
Yeah, for sure. And quickly, you want to say Marquis Brown's I have 5 spots lower than consensus, but that's simply because consensus has him at 25. He's played really well to start this year, but man, like objectively, am I really going to rank him over guys like Mike Williams, even Robert Woods, even Sterling Shepard? Like, I just simply can't do that personally.
Yeah, for sure. I don't disagree with that. I think we should do something a little different for tight ends, because we normally go over who we have higher and who we have lower. But for tight ends, it's usually the same names every single week, just because they're certainly lower on some players. So I'm sure you have Cole Kmet higher than consensus. I'm sure you have Jared Cook higher than consensus, because we're going to probably have that every week. So what I want to do is outside of the top 6 tight ends, and right now, for me, the top 6 tight ends is how they were drafted, right? The 3 big guys, and then Hawkinson, Andrews, and Kyle Pitts. That's how I have them ranked. How do you have tight ends 7 through 14 ranked is what I'd like to go over.
The one thing I would just quickly say, I do have Kyle Pitts at 4 still, despite consensus having him at 7. So little nugget there. But moving on to the rest of the range, the guy that I am comparatively the highest on is actually going to still be Pat Freiermuth. He's currently my tight end 21 on the week, and I do think you can even put him up higher than that going against the Cincinnati Bengals this week. Pat Freiermuth is the starting tight end for the Pittsburgh Steelers already. I mean, the utilization reports, he's out-snapped, he's out-targeted, he's outperformed Eric Ebron thus far. And we mentioned in a game where Deontay Johnson is expected to miss, like Ben Roethlisberger going to be able to pepper that ball around the field, and Pat Freiermuth is going to be a big beneficiary of that. We saw the involvement last week, was able to garner 4 receptions, nearly 40 receiving yards. I do think this could be a locked and loaded tight end 2 type for the rest of the season.
For sure. All right. So moving on from those, fringe guys, who do you have at tight end 7 right now? So who's the guy outside of the top 6 tight ends that you would start over anybody else?
Noah Fant.
You have Noah Fant at 7 right now. So yeah, I have Logan Thomas at 7 right now, because he's getting
Thomas like 9 for me.
His route participation right now is higher than any other tight end in the league. I think the Washington football team, as I've already kind of talked about with this game, I think it could be higher scoring than I think it's like 46 point over under right now. I think Washington and Buffalo could actually have some points in this one. So I like Logan Thomas from that perspective. I currently have Gronkowski right behind him at tight end 8, which I think, like, with AB out and Evans having a tough matchup, it definitely could be a Godwin Gronkowski type of game. And then I have Fant at 9. So that's kind of how that like 7 to 9 range works for me.
It's funny. It's the exact opposite for me. I have Fant 7, Gronk 8, and Logan Thomas 9. So transitioning off that, we both kind of agree that that's the consensus top 9 tight ends. Robert Tonyan is going to be number 10 for me, 3 spots higher than consensus. We saw last week when this guy is targeted, he is one of the most efficient tight ends in the league, put up a 3 for 52 and a touchdown line. And I think he's going to be relied upon just as much going up against that San Francisco 49ers defense on Sunday Night Football. So I like Robert Tonyan as a sneaky, really solid touchdown type of play in this game.
Yeah, not bad. I have Tyler Higbee at 10 and then Tonyan at 11 because I think Higbee's going to have another good, like with Woods having a tough matchup, I think Higbee could have a good game in this one. And then
for me,
Dallas Goedert, I have at 12, Jared Cook at 13, Cole Kmet at 14. I'm assuming you have the same names there because after those guys, it's really a drop off for me when you get into the Patriots tight ends and Mike Gesicki and like Gerald Everett and guys like that. It's a pretty significant drop off for me after Cole Kmet. And even Cole Kmet is a guy that's not getting high value targets right now. He's getting like a low ADOT type of target share. So those top 12 tight ends and then Jared Cook and Cole Kmet is kind of just like the whole, those are the guys that I'm willing to start each and every week pretty much. And then outside of that, it's really just matchup based.
It's funny you mentioned that because you have Higbee at 10, Tonyan at 11. I have Tonyan 10, Higbee 11. And then you mentioned Goddard, Cook, and Kmet is the order you have it. I have Cook, Goddard, Kmet. So fully agree. After Kmet, then you mentioned the Patriots tight ends. Like then you get into maybe like a Gerald Everett and a sneaky high upside shootout against Minnesota, I don't mind. You want to flex him. You want to put him as a low end tight end streaming option. Sure. Cool. Mike Gesicki, simply because we did see the participation last week. The only problem
the receivers have tough matchups in this game too.
The only problem there being that Jacoby Brissett is indeed the quarterback for this game. And after that, I mean, there's just nobody I'm really worth starting. Like Austin Hooper's number 15 in consensus right now, which is just disgusting.
Yeah, and that's not even like that high considering how like that range kind of shakes out, because it's like, oh, Austin Hooper's 15. It's like, yeah, okay. Like he got 5 targets last week. There's not many other tight ends that got 5 targets. So
for sure.
Yeah, that's kind of how the tight ends shake out. So that's the rankings video. If you guys enjoyed this video, as always, like the video, comment any of your thoughts down below, any of your start sit questions, any trade advice that you're looking for, any should I pick this guy up advice. We will answer it. We always answer every single comment. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. If we've answered your comment in the comment section, you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you guys want access to our rankings, which we kind of just went in depth over, you can go to our website, thefantasystockexchange.com. 3 ways you can get them. You can buy them for $20. You can go to underdogfantasy.com and deposit using promo code FSE, $10 match back on whatever you deposit to play some of their player props and over-unders and some of the games that are on there that are really fun, or patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. You can get a lot of cool benefits on there. So that's how you can get the rankings. Peace out, guys, and I'll talk to you soon.